These firms had little or no experience producing aircraft. Both quality and interchangeability of components were maintained by contractual enforced adherence to Gloster's original drawings. From the Meteor F.4 onwards, Armstrong-Whitworth began completing whole units at their Coventry facility in addition to Gloster's own production line. Belgian aviation firm Avians Ferry also produced the Meteor F.8 under license from Gloster for the Belgian Air Force. A similar license manufacturing arrangement was made with Dutch company Fokker to meet the Royal Netherlands Air Force's order. Engines, edit. The Meteor F.1 was powered by two Rolls-Royce Welland turbojet engines, Britain's first production jet engines, which were built under license from Whittles Designs. The Meteor embodied the advent of practical jet propulsion in the type's service life. Both military and civil aviation manufacturers rapidly integrated turbine engines into their designs, favoring its advantages such as smoother running and greater power output. The Meteor's engines were considerably more practical than those of the German Me-262 as, unlike the Me-262, the engines were embedded into the wing in nacelles between the front and rear spars rather than underslung, saving some weight due to shorter landing gear legs and less massive spars. The W.2B/23C engines upon which the Welland was based produced 1,700 lbf, 7.6 kN, of thrust each, giving the aircraft a maximum speed of 417 miles per hour, 671 kilometers per hour, at 9,800 feet, 3,000 m, and a range of 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers. It incorporated a hydraulically driven engine starter developed by Rolls-Royce, which was automated following the press of a starter button in the cockpit. The engines also drove hydraulic and vacuum pumps as well as a generator via a Rottle gearbox fixed on the forward wing spar. The cockpit was also heated by bleed air from one of the engines. The acceleration rate of the engines was manually controlled by the pilot. Rapid engine acceleration would frequently induce compressor stalls early on. The likelihood of compressor stalls was effectively eliminated upon further design refinements of both the Welland engine and the Meteor itself. At high speeds, the Meteor had a tendency to lose directional stability, often during unfavorable weather conditions, leading to a snaking motion. This could be easily resolved by throttling back to reduce speed. Based upon designs produced by power jets, Rolls-Royce produced more advanced and powerful turbojet engines. Beyond numerous improvements made to the Welland engine that powered the early Meteors, Rolls-Royce brought the Rover B.26, a radical redesign from the W.2B/500 under Adrian Lombard at Rover, into service as the Derwent. The Derwent engine, and the redesigned Derwent B, a scaled-down version of the Nene, was installed on many of the later production Meteors. The adoption of this new power plant led to considerable performance increases. The Meteor often served as the basis for the development of other early turbojet designs. A pair of Meteor F.4s were sent to Rolls-Royce to aid in their experimental engine trials, RA435 being used for reheat testing, and RA491 being fitted with the Rolls-Royce Avon, an axial flow engine. From their involvement in the development of the Meteor's engines, Armstrong Siddeley, Bristol Aircraft, Metropolitan Vickers and de Havilland also independently developed their own gas turbine engines. Performance, edit. During development, skeptical elements of the Air Ministry had expected mature piston-powered aircraft types to exceed the capabilities of the Meteor in all respects except that of speed. Thus, the performance of early Meteors was considered favorable for the interceptor mission, being capable of outdiving the majority of enemy aircraft. The conclusion of in-service trials conducted between the Meteor F.3 and the Hawker Tempest V was that the performance of the Meteor exceeded the Tempest in almost all respects, and that, barring some maneuverability issues, the Meteor could be considered a capable all-round fighter. Pilots formerly flying piston-engine aircraft often described the Meteor as being exciting to fly. British politician Norman Tebbit stated of his experience flying the Meteor in the RAF, "Get airborne, up with the wheels, hold it low until you were about 380 knots, pull it up and she would go up, well we thought then, like a rocket." Early jet engines consumed a lot more fuel than the piston engines they replaced, so the Welland engines imposed considerable flight time limitations on the Meteor F.1, leading to the type being used for local interception duties only. In the post-war environment, there was considerable pressure to increase the range of interceptors to counter the threat of bombers armed with nuclear weapons. The long-term answer to this question was in-flight refueling. Several Meteors were provided to Flight Refueling Limited for trials of the newly developed probe and drag refueling techniques. This capability was not incorporated in service Meteors, which had already been supplanted by more modern interceptor aircraft at this point. A total of 890 Meteors were lost in RAF service, 145 of these crashes occurring in 1953 alone, resulting in the deaths of 450 pilots. Contributory factors in the number of crashes were the poor brakes, failure of the landing gear, the high fuel consumption and consequent short flight endurance, less than 1 hour, causing pilots to run out of fuel, and difficult handling with one engine out due to the widely set engines. The casualty rate was exacerbated by the lack of ejection seats in early series Meteors. The much higher speed that the aircraft was capable of meant that to bail out pilots might have to overcome high G-forces and fast-moving airflow past the cockpit. There was also a greater likelihood of the pilot striking the horizontal tailplane. Ejection seats were fitted in the later F.8, FR.9, PR.10 and some experimental Meteors. The difficulty of bailing out of the Meteor had been noted by pilots during development, reporting several contributing design factors such as the limited size and relative position of the cockpit to the rest of the aircraft, and difficulty in using the two-lever jettisonable hood mechanism. Operational service, edit. Second World War, edit. Number 616 Squadron RAF was the first to receive operational Meteors. A total of 14 aircraft were initially delivered. The squadron was based at RAF Culmhead, Somerset, and had been equipped with the Spitfire 7. The conversion to the Meteor was initially a matter of great secrecy. Following a conversion course at Farnborough attended by the squadron's 6 leading pilots, the first aircraft was delivered to Culmhead on the 12th of July, 1944. The squadron and its 7 Meteors moved on the 21st of July, 1944 to RAF Manston on the East Kent coast, and, within a week, 32 pilots had been converted to the type. The Meteor was initially used to counter the V-1 flying bomb threat. 616 Squadron Meteors saw action for the first time on the 27th of July, 1944, when 3 aircraft were active over Kent. These were the first operational jet combat missions for the Meteor and for the RAF. After some problems, especially with jamming guns, the first 2 V-1 kills were made on the 4th of August. By war's end, Meteors had accounted for 14 flying bombs. After the end of the V-1 threat, and the introduction of the ballistic V-2 rocket, the RAF was forbidden to fly the Meteor on combat missions over German-held territory for fear of an aircraft being shot down and salvaged by the Germans. Number 616 Squadron briefly moved to RAF Debden to allow United States Army Air Forces, USAF, bomber crews to gain experience and create tactics in facing jet-engined foes before moving to Colon, Wiltshire. For a week from the 10th of October, 1944, a series of exercises were carried out in which a flight of meteors made mock attacks on a formation of 100 B-24s and B-17s escorted by 40 Mustangs and Thunderbolts. These suggested that, if the jet fighter attacked the formation from above, it could take advantage of its superior speed in the dive to attack the bombers and then escape by diving through the formation before the escorts could react. The best tactic to counter this was to place a fighter screen 5,000 feet, 1,500 m, above the bombers and attempt to intercept the jets early in the dive. The exercise was also useful from number 616 Squadron's perspective, giving valuable practical experience in Meteor operations. Meteor F.3s with original short engine nacelles. Number 616 Squadron exchanged its F.1s for the first Meteor F.3s on the 18th of December, 1944. These first 15 F.3s differed from the F.1 in having a sliding canopy in place of the sideways hinging canopy, increased fuel capacity and some airframe refinements. They were still powered by Welland-I engines. Later F.3s were equipped with the Derwent-I engines. This was a substantial improvement over the earlier Mark, although the basic design still had not reached its potential. Wind tunnel and flight tests demonstrated that the original short nacelles, which did not extend far fore and aft of the wing, contributed heavily to compressibility buffeting at high speed. New, longer nacelles not only cured some of the compressibility problems but added 75 miles per hour, 120 kilometers per hour, at altitude, even without upgraded power plants. The last batch of Meteor F.3s featured the longer nacelles. Other F.3s were retrofitted in the field with the new nacelles. The F.3 also had the new Rolls-Royce Derwent engines, increased fuel capacity and a new larger, more strongly raked bubble canopy. Judging the Meteor F.3s were ready for combat over Europe, the RAF finally decided to deploy them on the continent. On the 20th of January, 1945, 4 Meteors from 616 Squadron were moved to Moulsbroek in Belgium and attached to the 2nd Tactical Air Force, just under 3 weeks after the Luftwaffe's surprise Unternehmen-Bodenplatte attack on New Year's Day, in which Moulsbroek's RAF base, designated as Allied Advanced Landing Ground B.58, had been struck by piston-engined fighters of JG-27 and JG-54. The 616 Squadron Meteor F.3's initial purpose was to provide air defense for the airfield, but their pilots hoped that their presence might provoke the Luftwaffe into sending Me-262 jets against them. At this point the Meteor pilots were still forbidden to fly over German-occupied territory, or to go east of Eindhoven, to prevent a downed aircraft being captured by the Germans or the Soviets. In March, the entire squadron was moved to Gizrijgen Air Base and then in April, to Nijmegen. The Meteors flew armed reconnaissance and ground attack operations without encountering any German jet fighters. By late April, the squadron was based at Fasberg, Germany and suffered its first losses when 2 aircraft collided in poor visibility. The war ended with the Meteors having destroyed 46 German aircraft through ground attack. Friendly fire through misidentification as Messerschmitt Me-262s by Allied anti-aircraft gunners was more of a threat than the already diminished forces of the Luftwaffe. To counter this, Continental-based Meteors were given an all-white finish as a recognition aid. Post-war, edit. The next generation Meteor F.4 prototype first flew on the 17th of May, 1945, and went into production in 1946 when 16 RAF squadrons were already operating Meteors. Equipped with Rolls-Royce Derwent 5 engines, the smaller version of the Nene, The F.4 was 170 miles per hour, 270 kilometers per hour, faster than the F.1 at sea level, 585 against 415, but the reduced wings impaired its rate of climb. The F.4 wingspan was 86.4 centimeters shorter than the F.3 and with blunter wing tips, derived from the world speed record prototypes. Improvements included a strengthened airframe, fully pressurized cockpit, lighter ailerons to improve maneuverability, and rudder trim adjustments to reduce snaking. The F.4 could be fitted with a drop tank under each wing, and experiments were carried out with carriage of underwing stores and also in lengthened fuselage models. Because of increased demand, F.4 production was divided between Gloster and Armstrong-Whitworth. The majority of early F.4s did not go to the RAF. 100 were exported to Argentina, seeing action on both sides in the 1955 revolution. In 1947, only RAF numbers 74 and 222 squadrons were fully equipped with the F.4. 9 further RAF squadrons converted from 1948 onwards. From 1948, 38 F.4s were exported to the Dutch, equipping 4 squadrons, 322, 323, 326 and 327, split between bases in Soesterberg and Leeuwarden until the mid-1950s. In 1949, only 2 RAF squadrons were converted to the F.4. Belgium was sold 48 aircraft in the same year, going to 349 and 350 squadrons at Beauvechain, and Denmark received 20 over 1949-1950. In 1950, 3 more RAF squadrons were upgraded, including number 616 and, in 1951, 6 more. WA742, a 2-seat Meteor T.7 in 1961. A modified 2-seater F.4 for jet conversion and advanced training was tested in 1949 as the T.7. It was accepted by the RAF and the Fleet Air Arm and became a common addition to the various export packages, for example 43 to Belgium between 1948 and 1957, a similar number to the Netherlands over the same period, 2 to Syria in 1952, 6 to Israel in 1953, etc. Despite its limitations, unpressurized cockpit, no armament, limited instructor instrumentation, more than 650 T.7s were manufactured. The T.7 remained in RAF service into the 1970s. As improved jet fighters emerged, Gloster decided to modernize the F.4 while retaining as much of the manufacturing tooling as possible. The result was the definitive production model, the Meteor F.8, G41K, serving as a major RAF fighter until the introduction of the Hawker Hunter and the Supermarine Swift. The first prototype F.8 was a modified F.4, followed by a true prototype, VT-150, that flew on the 12th of October, 1948 at Morton Valence. Flight testing of the F.8 prototype led to the discovery of an aerodynamic problem. After ammunition was expended, the aircraft became tail-heavy and unstable around the pitch axis due to the weight of fuel in fuselage tanks no longer being balanced by the ammunition. Gloster solved the problem by substituting the tail of the abortive G-42 single-engined jet fighter. The F.8 and other production variants successfully used the new tail design, giving the later Meteors a distinctive appearance, with taller, straighter edges compared with the rounded tail of the F.4s and earlier Marks. The F.8 also featured a fuselage stretch of 76 centimeters, 30 intended to shift the aircraft's center of gravity and also eliminate the use of ballast formerly necessary in earlier Marks due to the subsequent elimination from the design of 2 of the originally designed 6 installed cannon. The F.8 incorporated uprated engines, Derwent 8S, with 3,600 lbf, 16 kN, thrust each combined with structural strengthening, a Martin Baker ejection seat and a blown teardrop cockpit canopy that provided improved pilot visibility. Between 1950 and 1955, the Meteor F.8 was the mainstay of RAF Fighter Command, and served with distinction in combat in Korea with the RAF as well as operating with many air forces worldwide, although it was clear that the original design was obsolete compared with contemporary swept-wing fighters such as the North American F-86 Sabre and the Soviet MiG-15. The last Meteor F.8 would left RAF frontline squadrons in 1957. Several F.8 were used for target towing or as aggressor until 1970. Initial deliveries of the F.8 to the RAF were in August 1949, with the first squadron receiving its fighters in late 1950. Like the F.4, there were strong export sales of the F.8. Belgium ordered 240 aircraft, the majority assembled in the Netherlands by Fokker. The Netherlands had 160 F.8s, equipping 7 squadrons until 1955. Denmark had 20, ordered in 1951, the last F.8s in frontline service in Europe. The RAF ordered 94 F.8s, which served in the Korean War. Despite arms embargoes, both Syria and Egypt received F.8s from 1952, as did Israel, each using their Meteors during the Suez Crisis. Brazil ordered 60 new Meteor F.8s and 10 T.7 trainers in October 1952, paying with 15,000 tons of raw cotton. In the 1950s, Meteors were developed into effective photo reconnaissance, training and night fighter versions. The fighter reconnaissance, FR, versions were the first to be built, replacing the aging Spitfires and Mosquitoes then in use. 2 FR.5s were built on the F.4 body, one was used for nose section camera tests, the other broke up in midair while in testing over mortar valence. On the 23rd of March, 1950, the first FR.9 flew. Based on the F.8, it was 20 centimeters longer with a new nose incorporating a remote control camera and window and was also fitted with additional external ventral and wing fuel tanks. Production of the FR.9 began in July. Number 208 Squadron, then based at Fayed, Egypt, was the first to be upgraded, followed by the 2nd Tactical Air Force in West Germany, Number 2 Squadron RAF at Buckeberg and Number 79 Squadron RAF at RAF Gütersloh flew the FR.9 from 1951 until 1956. In Aden, Number 8 Squadron RAF was given FR.9s in November 1958 and used them until 1961. Ecuador, 12, Israel, 7, and Syria, 2, were foreign customers for the FR.9. In 1951, 29, 141, 85 and 264 squadrons each received a number of NF.11 aircraft, the first of the Meteor night fighters. It was rolled out across the RAF until the final deliveries in 1954. A tropicalized version of the NF.11 for the Middle East was developed, first flying on the 23rd of December, 1952 as the NF.13. The aircraft equipped Number 219 Squadron RAF at Kabrit and Number 39 Squadron at Fayed, both in Egypt. The aircraft served during the Suez Crisis and remained with Number 39 Squadron after they were withdrawn to Malta until 1958. Several problems were encountered. The heavily framed T-7 canopy made landings tricky due to limited visibility. The underwing external fuel tanks tended to break up when the wing cannons were fired, and gun harmonization, normally set to about 400 yards, was poor due to the wings flexing in flight. Belgium, 24, Denmark, 20, and France, 41, were foreign customers for the NF.11. XIF NF.13s were sold to France, 2, Syria, 6, Egypt, 6, and Israel, 6. In addition to the armed, low-altitude operation, tactical FR.9 variant, Gloster also developed the PR.10 for high-altitude missions. The first prototype flew on the 29th of March, 1950 and was actually converted into the first production aircraft. Based on the F.4, it had the F.4 style tail and the longer wings of the earlier variant. All the cannons were removed and a single camera placed in the nose with two more in the rear fuselage. The canopy was also changed. The PR.10 was delivered to the RAF in December 1950 and were given to No. 2 and No. 541 squadrons in Germany and No. 13 Squadron RAF in Cyprus. The PR.10 was rapidly phased out from 1956. Rapid improvements in surface-to-air missile technology and the introduction of newer aircraft capable of flying at greater altitudes and speeds had rendered the aircraft obsolete. Argentina, edit. Argentina became the first overseas operator of the Meteor, placing an order for 100 FMK.4s in May 1947. The Meteor's procurement led to Argentina becoming the second air force in the Americas to operate jet aircraft. The Argentine Meteors were first used in combat during the 16th of June, 1955 rebellion when, in an attempt to kill Juan Perón, rebel-flown aircraft bombed the Casa Rosada. A loyalist Meteor shot down a rebel at 6, while another strafed rebel held Ezeiza Airport. The rebels seized Moran Airport and Air Base of the Meteors, and used several captured aircraft to perform multiple attacks against loyalist forces and the Casa Rosada before the rebellion was defeated by day's end. A second revolt, the Revolution Libertadora, broke out on the 16th of September 1955, with, again, both sides operating the Meteor. The rebels seized 3 Meteors. Government Meteors flew strafing attacks against the rebel-held destroyers Rio and Servants, and several landing ships near Rio Santiago on the 16th of September and attacking Pajas Blancas Airport near the city of Córdoba, damaging several Avro Lincoln bombers. The rebel-flown Meteors were used to attack loyalist forces attacking Córdoba, losing one of their number on the 19th of September to an engine failure caused by use of automobile petrol instead of jet fuel. The acquisition of F-86 Sabres in 1960 allowed the remaining Meteors to be transferred to the ground attack role. In this role, the aircraft were refitted with bomb pylons and rocket rails. The bare metal color scheme was also discarded for a camouflage scheme. Argentine Meteors were used to attack rebels during attempted uprisings in September 1962 and April 1963. The type was ultimately withdrawn from service in 1970. Australia, edit. The Royal Australian Air Force, RAF, acquired 113 Meteors between 1946 and 1952, 94 of which were the F.8 variant. The first RAF Meteor was an F.3 delivered for evaluation in June 1946. Australia's F.8s saw extensive service during the Korean War with No. 77 Squadron RAF, part of British Commonwealth Forces Korea. The squadron had personnel from the RAF and other Commonwealth Air Forces attached to it. It had arrived in Korea equipped with piston-engined Mustangs. To match the threat posed by MiG-15 jet fighters, it was decided to re-equip the squadron with Meteors. Jet conversion training was conducted at Iwakuni, Japan, after which the squadron returned to the Korean theater in April 1951 with about 30 Meteor F.8s and T.7s. The squadron moved to Kimpo Air Base in June, and was declared combat-ready the following month. More advanced designs, such as the F-86 Sabre and Hawker P.1081, were considered but would not be available within a realistic time frame. The Meteor proved to be considerably inferior in combat against the MiG-15 in several respects, including speed and maneuverability at high altitude.